Welcome, my friends. I'm Dave Champion. This is my co-host, Bill Carns, and together we are totally unprepared. Well, I need to man up, all right? A couple weeks ago, I made Bill a wager on this show in which I said that Ben Carson was going to fall out of the top three as Republican candidates for the primary for president after he made a statement which seemed to indicate that he had no respect for the provision of the Constitution that says there shall be no religious test to hold a public office, and that's when he said he didn't think a Muslim should be president.
I think you actually said he'd be out of the race.
No. I said he'd drop out of the top three.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, and I said I think that the big money backers are not going to back him. But they're different than the American public. The big money backers are a different dynamic. But I said he'd drop out of the top three. That was what I said. That's what the bet was. Okay. Not what the big money guys are going to do. So, and you know, the American electorate never fails to shock and surprise me. I thought the fact that he was at best saying he did not give respect to a constitutional provision, and at worst hinting he didn't give respect to it, I thought that would matter to Americans, but I'm always out of touch with that, what matters to Americans. You know, for decades we had the Red Scare, the Soviet Union, because Americans need somebody to hate.
Oh, yeah. We need a boogeyman.
And the boogeyman du jour. And since 9/11, the government and its complicit media have created the new scare for Americans to hate is Islam. Oh, see? There you go. So, you know, to me, the whole thing is silly. But I forgot that there's hundreds of millions of Americans who buy that crap. So when he
Let's get to drinking, man.
Wait a second. So when he talked about Muslims, they were like, yeah, keep that enemy out of the, you know, just silly
If he had
stuff.
said the same thing about Baptists, it would have been a different story.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so the bet was that I owed Bill a shot of good tequila, okay? So I bought something. Is it good, Bill?
Yeah, Patron's a good label.
Okay.
It's not my label of choice, but it is good.
Okay. I did not buy a big bottle because I don't drink a lot of tequila. So I bought show bottles. How's that?
There you go.
All right, so what are we doing here? It's your deal. Let's do it.
Well, there's really 4 tequilas out there. This is 2 of the 4. The one that we want to discount immediately out of that 4 is the gold tequila. It says gold on it. It's about 51% real tequila, 49% filtered water with caramel and sugars and other
they
crap.
Put some other form of almost like industrial alcohol in there. From what I heard.
It's terrible,
yeah.
and that's the type of stuff that you want to put into jungle juice or drink when you're in college or give to people that you just don't like. It's terrible. Then you have the silver. That's this stuff, or Blanco, they call it. That is generally used for blending in a margarita. Then you get a reposado, which we don't have. It would go in the middle. That would be for mixing, like, say, a tequila sunrise. And then you have the añejo, which is meant for sipping and drinking. We're going to do a little bit of each of these just so you can taste the difference here. And we do actually have to leave here in not too long, so we're just going to do a bit here and a bit here.
All right.
So this would be the silver, and this is Don Julio. Good stuff.
It smells interesting. Now this would be for shooting. This would not be for sipping.
No. This would actually be generally for blending with ice, like a margarita.
I mean right here. I heard you.
Okay.
Right here, right now, you wouldn't want to sip on this, right?
No, you just shoot it.
Yeah.
That's a younger tequila.
Tasty enough.
Yeah, younger tequila, really not aged, stored in stainless steel casks until it's thrown in the bottle. Now the añejo is actually meant for sipping or drinking. You can shoot this.
And you notice he poured more of that.
Yes, I did, because this is the good stuff.
All right. Now I'm probably just going to sip on this throughout the show.
However you like, but this is actually this is aged for usually Don Julio or Patron. It's Patron, not Julio.
Significantly different bouquet.
It is, and it will be aged for more than 6 months, usually up to a couple of years.
There you go, my friend.
All right. And quite a bit different flavor.
Oh, yeah, dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is good. I'll sip on
And
this
it's a lot smoother.
All right, I think I want to clear my throat. Tequila.
Good stuff.
Where are we going? What are we going to talk about?
I'm kind of totally unprepared.
Let's talk about. You want to talk about the Jerry Brown gun thing?
Oh, yeah. We talked about that at lunch. Jerry Brown, Governor of California.
Yeah, California legislature passed a bill, and Jerry Brown just signed it into effect, that prevents virtually anybody except on-duty police officers from carrying firearms onto any campus, from kindergarten to higher education in the state of California. Now, we just saw the Umpqua shooting, and we discussed that, my view is the problem is not the availability, the too great availability of weapons, which is what the anti-gunners claim. My thing is, when you have a place like that that's a gun-free zone, the problem is the lack of availability at the moment that you need them to defend yourself.
And I'll be ranting about something just like this in the third segment today.
Okay. So one of the couple of interesting things about this bill, who didn't get exempted and who did get exempted. Who did not get exempted, who normally do, judges, prosecutors, and public defenders. They normally are exempted from all this stuff. They are not exempted from this bill. The first time a judge gets hooked up with his gun on a campus, we'll see how that goes. Oh, unconstitutional.
Now, I understand the law is so ridiculous it includes even just a single round of ammunition.
Yes, a single round of ammunition in the absence of any firearm is a criminal offense. Yeah, it's and now in California, you're probably aware, law enforcement is a powerful lobby. One of the most powerful lobbies behind traditional non-governmental unions in that state. And they backed the bill because they did get exempted. Off-duty cops are exempted. Retirees are exempted. Retirees? 85-year-old guy, he's exempted, right? And even retired reserve police officers that might have worked 8 hours a month for, 20 years, which probably wouldn't add up to like 1 year for a regular cop. They're exempted. So law enforcement got behind this bill because they all got exempted.
Oh, yeah. We're okay. As long as we're taken care of, we don't care about everybody else.
Correct. So, but just the insanity. And I'm sure Jerry Brown, being the leftist that he is, took great pleasure in signing that bill in the shadow of Umpqua. To me, I find it despicable in the shadow of Umpqua. If Umpqua proved one thing, it's that when some nutball starts shooting, and everybody's disarmed, you just sit there and die until at some point law enforcement arrives.
Somebody with a gun shows up, because that's who they call.
And I've always, I started calling these on the Erstwhile Dave Champion show, these gun-free zones, legislatively enacted murder zones.
I read something on social media I think it was this morning or yesterday, where a police officer was taking his lunch break at an Olive Garden, and it was his birthday. His family were showing up. They were a little bit late, and they have a no gun in the restaurant policy.
He was on duty?
On duty, in uniform, and asked to leave because he had a gun. So we've been hearing that this has happened. So the thing is, I don't really care too much whether a cop was asked to stay or go because he had a gun. Of course, there was an apology. The CEO of the whole chain apologized. They made this whole thing. That guy's been fired or disciplined, whatever.
Okay, but so it was not a corporate policy?
No.
Okay.
Well, if it was a corporate policy...
It's not now.
it wasn't about cops to be included, right?
Okay.
So my point is, whenever this has been happening over the last 2-3 months, we have cops that are on duty with their guns, and they're told, hey, we don't allow guns in this establishment. You can't be here, okay? I'm marking that down because I'm not going to go there.
Right, nor would I.
You tell me that I have to surrender my gun to spend money in here and be a potential murder victim over a meal. I'm not spending my money with you. No, it's not going to happen.
And for me, it's not about the fact that they disallow police officers in there. It's to me, it's that they disallow guns.
Right, which is exactly what I'm trying to profess.
Now, for instance, from your time on Metro, that if you are a level 1 peace officer, you are required by law to take that action, which is appropriate, when you witness a felony take place.
Correct.
Okay. In the old days, well before your time, because I'm older than you, that pretty much mandated that police officers off duty had to carry their guns at all times. Then it became discretionary. Okay, what the appropriate thing might be, don't carry your gun, use a cell phone or get on a payphone back then, whatever. You don't have to go deal with felons when you're off. Okay. but there's still quite a few officers who perceive that requirement as to mandate for them, at least in their mind, that they always have their gun and they're always able to act when they see a felony. Okay? I think that they're fewer and fewer all the time, but there's still those guys. And it still, I think, is a reasonable interpretation. You remember Stoney's? It went out of business, but it had been
it was a country
big
bar.
name in country western dancing and bar.
It went out of business? Because I was just in there a few months back.
Right, they went out of business.
Oh, okay.
And they just reopened, but it's like one of the big Las Vegas millionaire families now owns it, where before it was owned by the original guy, Stoney.
Okay.
And Stoney, the guy, he actually told Metro officers that were in there off-duty dancing. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the country western dance scene, it's not like a bar where people go in and get sloshed. People are dancing. That's the primary activity. And so drinking is really secondary. You know, guys will have a couple beers. That's it. No big deal.
Probably why he went out of business.
Yeah. Well, believe me, later in the night when the country dancers leave, that's when they make their money. That's when the younger crowd comes in and they start hard drinking. But
Speaking of which, go ahead.
Oh yeah, Stoney actually told off-duty Metro officers that they could not come in with their guns.
Really?
So guess what they did?
They didn't come in anymore.
Right. So now, his security didn't have guns. He didn't have a gun. Nobody had a gun. So if somebody gets a gun in there, I mean, they didn't wand you or anything. If somebody gets a gun in there and starts shooting people, 300 people in a club and one guy starts shooting the place up.
Yeah, well, just...
How many people are dead by the time the cops arrive? The guys with the guns arrive?
The idea behind I don't want any guns in here because I don't want any trouble is flawed, especially for those of us who carry all the time, or at least regularly, that when you tell this person you can't come in here with a gun, you've got to leave it in your car or leave it at home. And then I go in there and then I become the victim of a crime. And I normally take care of my own safety and security. What you're doing is saying, I'm going to assume all liability for your safety that you normally assume for yourself. Now, if you never carry a gun at all, you never worry about your own self-protection, then that's off the table.
No different.
But if you or I are to take our guns off to go in to an establishment, a restaurant, a mall, a nightclub, whatever, when we normally would carry, then they assume that liability.
And it's funny that you say that. And I'm not going to give you that thought because we're out of time. And we'll be
back.
Right back. Oh, we're back. And now it's time for... What is up with the pretentiousness of a certain type of anti-gunner? Last week, when Bill and I were speaking, I mentioned what's euphemistically been dubbed the angry truck rant that I did that appears on my Facebook public figure page. And when Bill and I were talking about it last week, it had 60,000 views. As I sit here talking to you today, it's just shy of 1.5 million views. And with that came something to the effect of 7,500 comments. And obviously, I can't keep up with those comments, but I did browse them. And there was a lot of support, and then the anti-gunners weighed in as well. And I don't want to get into the anti-gunners' various arguments. I did, by the way, a follow-up video to that dealing with the anti-gunners' comments. So if you'd like to see any of this, before I get on to my point, if you'd like to see any of this, if you're on Facebook, search for Dave Champion. You'll see one that says Dave Champion Public Figure. That's the page you want. And then just click on the videos. There's a part that takes you to the videos. The latest video is my rebuttal, and the one just after that is the original, angry truck rant. So you might find those two of interest. Now, one comment by the anti-gunners was so odd, it caught my attention. Just bizarre. And it came in two flavors. One is that people who carry guns are wussies, although in the post they didn't use a W, they used a P. Amazing, a word that 99% of the population uses, but you can't say it. Well, I could say it, but no one won't let me say it. And the other one was that people who carry firearms, by the way, while I'm doing this, you can't see off camera, Bill is pouring himself more tequila. I'm outing him on that. There. All right. So that people who carry firearms are fearful. And these two are, of course, very closely related. And I was really shocked by that. Now, I understand that it's just bombastic rhetoric intended to try and elevate the stature of the anti-gunner, that they're not fearful and they're not wussies, and all you people with guns are. I get that. But if somebody were to look at that seriously, it's pretty much an inane concept. You know, I don't like telling stories about me, but that's where I know my stories. I don't know everybody else's stories, so I apologize in advance for telling this story. When we talk about somebody who's fearful. When I was 15 years old, I worked in a family pharmacy. They pretty much don't exist anymore. The kind, you know, where the pharmacy is at the back and they've got a gift store and sell greeting cards and stuff up front. And from the time I was about 14, I worked there. And the owner and the gal that worked up front pretty much became a second family to me. And one day we were in there and a guy walked in, and it was just the lady in the front, the owner in the back working behind the pharmacy, and me. And I'm looking at this guy, and even at 15, for whatever reason, I seem to be able to catch the vibe that this guy's not right. And so I went back to the pharmacist and I told the pharmacist, call the police, we're about to be robbed. He's like, what? This 15-year-old kid is telling me, I said, call the police, we're about to be robbed. Deadly earnest, right? Absolutely certain this guy was going to rob us. And so he picks up the phone and starts dialing, and I walk back out. And as I'm walking back out, here comes the lady from the front, her name was Carol, being led at gunpoint by this guy to the back of the pharmacy. And he pushes her back behind the counter, and he pushes me back behind the counter, and he's got his gun. And the pharmacist is on the phone, and the last words I hear him say as he hangs up are, call the police. Okay, so I know he didn't really call the police like I told him to. So here we are, and the guy is screaming, get on the ground, get on the ground. And so the pharmacist lays face down, and Carol lays face down, and I squatted down. Now, mind you, I'm 15 years old. And he says, get down. I looked at him and I said, no. If you're going to shoot me here. You're not going to shoot me in the back of the head. He went ahead and robbed the place and left me squatting down there. And then as he went out the front door, I sprinted out the front door after him. And I sprinted down the sidewalk after him, and I was closing on him. His getaway car was there, and I was actually so close behind him that he had to do a dive head first through the passenger seat with his legs still sticking out, and the car drove away. Okay? Now, one of the reasons I hate to tell stories about myself is it can be construed as I'm trying to pat myself on the back, and I'm not. Thank you, Bill.
Good job.
That was as natural for me then as it would be to do that today. And I'm not comparing myself to anybody else. It doesn't make me better, worse. It's just always how I've been built. This guy stuck a gun in my face. This guy stuck a gun in the face of people who are my surrogate family, okay? But clearly this does not speak to somebody who is fearful. Funny anecdote to the tail of that story. About 10 days later, I actually saw the guy, and I saw him pull up into a residence, get out of the same car, and walk into the residence. So I called the detective who had interviewed me after the robbery, and I told him that he's here, and the detective says, are you sure? To point out I've always been kind of a a-hole, I said, Detective, I seem to remember when we were together that you wore glasses. He said, yes, that's correct. I said, I don't. No. So he says, all right, we'll be right down. And he and about 20 cops showed up and arrested the guy and prosecuted him and sent him off to jail. So, but clearly, now, I have worn a gun every day for the better part of 3 decades. And to me, it's no different than getting up and putting on a watch or putting on your belt or putting your socks on or anything else. It's just part of the daily wardrobe. And it's funny because you would never hear a person say, oh, you have a fire extinguisher in your little hobby shop that you've built into your garage. You must be fearful. you must be a wussy. You never hear anybody say that, because everybody recognizes that a fire extinguisher is a tool that's used in the very, very unlikely event that something catastrophic happens, or possibly catastrophic if you don't have a fire extinguisher. It goes from bad to catastrophic damn fast. Why do people put seatbelts on? They don't put seatbelts. You don't see anybody get in their car and they sit there and they tremble. And, oh my God, oh, I'm so fearful. Oh, my seatbelt's on now. Oh, no. They put the seatbelt on in case what they hope never happens. And so if the bad thing happens, they minimize how bad it's going to be, right? But yet somehow when somebody puts a gun on, because the bad thing might happen, hopefully not, hopefully never, but if it does, a bad thing won't become catastrophic because you have the tool, like a fire extinguisher, to handle it. Bill, you and I have been in the firearms industry a long time. What are your thoughts on this?
Cheers.
Yes, yes.
My thoughts are this. When ignorant people speak, stupid things come out.
There is that.
Yeah. I don't talk much about how to repair a diesel engine in an automobile because I know nothing about it. I can't have a passionate argument for or against the reliability, I shouldn't say reliability, but how to mechanically get in there and get it. I pay somebody else to do it.
Right.
I know nothing about it.
Yeah.
So some people may hate diesel engines for whatever reason. Oh, they put out huge amounts of exhaust. No, they don't. That was in the 70s. Doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
Different engines, different emissions, different fuel that goes in there. You never notice it's diesel number 2. So those sorts of arguments would be ignorant. People that don't carry guns, have never carried a gun, have never trained with a gun, have never held a gun, have never fired a gun, but yet they have a passionate opinion about guns, are completely ignorant. They don't know the side of the argument they're arguing against, which means that all the words coming out of their mouth on the subject completely irrelevant, completely worthless. I mean, a total waste of time. Anytime I've had anybody talk to me about gun-related stuff and they're anti-gun, and keep in mind, my girlfriend has an aunt who is vehemently anti-gun, knows nothing about guns. Nothing about guns at all. And she and I have never met, but she is a big tree hugger, lefty, political, all that great stuff. I understand she's a wonderful person, but she's misguided on politics and guns and all the other things that the left is.
She has a fantasy worldview.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, I want it to be utopia. Okay, well, I live in the real world. I didn't go down the rabbit hole and live with, who was it who went down there? Alice in Wonderland.
All right.
So I'm not in Wonderland. When people argue about something and they don't know both sides of the story, their argument is worthless. So pro-gunners can be anti-gunners. All they have to do is leave their gun at home. They weren't born with guns. They didn't carry them through grade school.
Right, right.
But, you know, I have a friend of mine who's about your age, and he went to junior high school in the Midwest. And in his junior high, back when they were called junior high schools, now they're middle schools, but when they're junior high school, he was on the rifle team. And of course, they had an indoor rifle range in the basement, as they do. And some of the biggest indoor shooting ranges in the country are in the basements of older junior high and high schools. There's a couple in Las Vegas.
Yep.
But he was on the rifle team. He was about your age, and you know, you bring your rifle to school, and you go down, you'd be on the rifle team, and sometimes it'd be part of PE and whatever. That's just the way it was. Now it's a SWAT call-out.
The mentality has become absolutely absurd. And you're right, it's people who don't carry guns. One guy that was particularly insulting, instead of making war with him, I actually said something complimentary having nothing to do with the gun argument, and we ended up having a side conversation.
Oh, you got very nice shoulders and a handsome smile.
We ended up having a side conversation, and I had looked at his profile on Facebook before I had the side conversation, so I because of my background working gangs,
sized him up.
Yeah, yeah. And I realized that he was an OG, an old gangster, and that he was no longer banging, and he probably had felonies, which means he cannot own a gun. So if you cannot own a gun, then what are you going to call people with guns?
You're kind of a hater.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And so this guy contacts me privately on the side after instead of making war, I actually gave him a little compliment. And he says, I used to gang bang. I had the same wife for 13 years. I've got kids now. I don't bang. And I'm a 2-time felon, and so I can't own guns. It's like, and you, a gangster, 2-time felon, have the pretentiousness to come on my thread, on my page, and say that guys who carry guns are wussies without the W. It's just shocking.
Well, it just goes to show that people that can't, don't, or won't are ignorant on the other side of the subject. You take somebody who's an anti-gunner and they're allowed to have guns, you teach them how to shoot, they seem to always love it. You and I have seen it hundreds of times.
Yes, we have. And we'll be back right after these words.
So what's Bill gonna rant about today? Let's find out. You know what really grinds my gears? Again, stupidity. You know, we end up having this whole idea that America is overly armed and it is the murder capital of the planet. No, it's not. 2012 are the most recent figures that I was able to come up with. And it shows that for every 100,000 people for every 100 people that are out there, there is 90 guns. 90 guns for every 100 people. Now, people like me, I own a couple more than just for me. So the few people out there that don't own them, I try to make up for that a little bit in case they need a gun. Tongue in cheek. So 90% of the people have guns per capita, guns to people. You would think if what the left says were true, that guns cause all this crime, we'd by far be the highest per capita murder rate in the world. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work out for them. Some 218 sovereign nations and territories that are claimed around the world, okay? America is by far the #1 in gun ownership. The next is a little bit more than half, 47 per 100. Now, who's got the highest murder rate? Honduras. Honduras has hugely tight gun control. Mexico, they've got a pretty good murder rate. They've got very, very strict gun control as well. Matter of fact, Honduras leading the list. 54 out of every 100,000 people are killed with a gun. That's the murder rate there. The United States, 4.7 out of 100,000. So where does that leave us on the list of 218 countries? Just below half, at 111. We'd be at half if there are 222 countries, but there's 218. So we're at the top half of the bottom half. Why is it then that the anti-gunners would have you believe that all these guns are creating all this crime? Now, they would love to get rid of all guns and then have this utopian society. Doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You know, the best predictor we have for the future, that is the crystal ball of history. History shows us what's going to happen. It's like socialism. Socialism has never worked in this country, in this world. It has never stood the test of time. Never. But everybody who wants socialism, aka Bernie Sanders, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, they all want socialism. They believe that their version will work because it's slightly different than the other version. Now, the core principles of socialism is the same, but they're picking off the different petals that are going to be different colors, but it's the same stem, it's the same ground it's grown on, it's the same root system, the same watering. Otherwise, it wouldn't be socialism. The plant's going to die. It's just the way socialism works. So history will show us all kinds of stuff. You disarm a population, the law-abiding people that are there that will obey the laws will obey those laws. The criminals don't give a crap what the law says. They've got their intent and their prerogative. They're going to do it. They don't care what the laws on the books are. Most criminals support gun control because it makes their job easier. Detroit, per capita, has the highest murder rate in the entire country as of 2012. where it was 54 out of every 100,000 people were killed. They would have been second on the list in the world if they were their own country. Honduras, I think, is 57. I may have said 54 earlier, Dave. It's 57. Detroit was 54. Chicago was in the top 10. Now, all of these cities that have really high gun control and really high murder rates all work out together. You got Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, St. Louis. These are the cities that have this really high gun control and really high murder rate. Plano, Texas, right there in the heart, good old country Texas. 0.4% of the population, 0.4 out of every 100,000 people are killed due to gun violence. That means 1 out of about every 225,000 people are killed with a gun. That's how it works out. So the numbers don't work out for the left. They never do. So they have these arguments, and they end up doing things like going on Dave Champion's page and saying people that own guns are wussies. Dave, it sucks when the actual numbers tell a different story, and what we say, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, a couple of interesting facts to back up what you just said. Chicago and Houston have almost identical demographics. And I didn't know you were going to do this because, of course, we are totally unprepared. So I didn't bring the exact figures, but I'm going to give you something close to it. Virtual identical demographics as far as population, even the demographics of by like race are somewhat similar. Okay. And like Chicago, which I believe is now #1, you mentioned in 2012 Detroit, I think Chicago has taken the title now. Chicago is now something like 59 for every 100,000, and Houston's like 2.3 for every 100,000, okay? Virtually identical demographics. What's the difference? Texas doesn't have gun control. Houston doesn't have gun control. Chicago has incredibly strict, inane, absurd gun control. You also mentioned the worldwide figures with the nations. I saw some information, again, I didn't know you were going to do this or I would have brought the specific numbers, but it goes something like this. If you take out the top 5 or 6 cities with the most gun violence in America, all of which have strict gun control, then America on that list of nations drops like down below into the bottom 20th percentile.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, by just removing the cities that have gun control.
Yeah.
I mean, how much more of a revelation does somebody need? Take the cities that have strict gun control and pull them out, and the numbers, our ratings as far as number of people killed and, per thousand drops into the 20th percentile.
And answer this for me. Let's say you're a politician, and you say we should ban guns further and have more restrictive gun control and even take certain guns away from people. So we're going to pass legislation that says you need to turn your guns in, and if not, we're going to come get them. Okay? It's not the politicians going to get them.
No.
Okay? You're going to send the police or whatever henchmen that you so ordain to go out and get them. Why are you sending these people's life in? If you're the first one to kick a door and go in there on a gun confiscation thing as a legislator, go ahead.
You know, on the Erstwhile Dave Champion show, one of the most explosive shows I did as far as controversy. And it's funny, I ran into some people around town who tell me that there's a whole bunch of like-minded people, I guess, in Pahrump, that a year after that episode, we're still passing it around, like, you know, here, watch this. Because I said, for me, everybody has a line or lines in the sand of when it's time to pick up a gun and say it's time to fight for freedom because the process has been rigged and free men can no longer prevail. And there are there's various lines on different subjects. But on firearms, it is confiscation. There may be other lines, but without a doubt, confiscation. And what made the show so explosive, as I said, if that day comes, I have no intention of going after the people who are actually committing the confiscations. I'm going after the people who voted to send them to do the confiscation.
Sure.
And it got a little, went even further from there. If one, and here was what I said on the show, kidnap them. Okay?
I remember this show well.
And do some harsh things on video. I won't describe them here. I describe them on my show. I won't sully our show, right? I said, and then make that video available to the public through every means you can with a note to the politicians, you're next unless this law is repealed. Not repealed? Okay, here we go. And again and again and again until they want to be maimed, disfigured, have limbs missing. If the vote is worth it to them.
Yeah, lather, rinse, repeat.
What's that?
Lather, rinse, repeat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, I would hate to be part of the group that would have to go out and serve this kind of a warrant. Now, since our last show, I've actually moved residence from point A to point B. The house I was living in a great house. I found it a little over, about 2.5 years ago, it was for rent. Moved in there, loved the place. We'd stay there for a long, long time if we could, but the owner decided to sell it. The market's coming back up. Somebody bought it, so I had to move into another house. Well, the house I'm in now, the one I'm in the process of moving into, I like because it's kind of off without any neighbors around, and it's a compound. It's got this great big barbed wire fence all around the whole perimeter of the property. You cannot get to my front door.
No,
you can't. And the other beauty of it is,
I have to like camo up in a low crawl to get to.
Well, yeah, but the other beauty is there's actually somebody who lives right at the front gate and manages the front gate.
Really?
I'm not going to get into the details, but yes, truly.
I didn't know that part.
Yes. So, I mean, I'm not going to be lulled into a false sense of security, but I can hear everything coming from a long ways off.
Right.
Yeah. It's just, there's just the topography and everything lends itself to added security. When I saw that place, I'm like, yeah, I'd like this place. Yeah. This is good.
Yeah. To me, when we talk about the placement within the nations and, you know, Iceland, people would not imagine this, but of course Americans don't focus on anything but America. Iceland is awash in guns. Iceland is like a gun paradise, okay? And they have virtually no gun violence. Okay? So if gun control is what keeps violence from happening, explain to me Iceland.
Well, you know, the anti-gunners will often contradict that with things like, well, what about the violence that happens in Sri Lanka or in Nigeria or in Mogadishu, Somalia? But the thing is those are really absent a cohesive government. And you're talking about warlords.
Yes, correct.
And there might actually be a government in Nigeria, but there's warlords that control various areas. Right. So in absence of a profound government that actually is able to govern and govern efficiently without governing via, you know, some sort of a
repressing rights.
Exactly, a repressive dictator of some kind. Then more guns in the hands of honest citizens, honest people, has always reduced crime. Always. Right. You take the guns away, you have a repressive government, there's always problems around there.
And, you know, from my point of view, and I've long said this, the problem is not that we have too many guns in society. The problem is that so many of our fellow citizens refuse to man up and accept their responsibility for their own safety, safety of their family, and if they so choose, the safety of other innocents around them. So when a guy comes up shooting, and everybody's like, oh, I'm too lazy to train and carry a gun, I guess we'll just all have to watch this guy shoot all these people today. You know, yes, it's his fault. But I'm disgusted with all the lazy POSs who didn't have the balls to be American.
True that. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's segment 4. It is time for us to get into the viewer emails. And again, remember, send them to right here, daveandbillshow@gmail.com. Whenever you have any sort of question or a comment or a story you want to share with us to discuss, send that off to us. We're happy to look over those things, bring up some good stuff on the show. Another thing that you can do is go online and take a look at all the shows we've done. This is episode 41, for those of you who are counting. I think I'm the only one who is. And you can go to totallyunprepared.info. You can watch the videos there. There's links onto the YouTube page. You can listen to the audio and the RSS feeds and all that good stuff. So speaking of which, it was 2-3 episodes ago, we had a guest on here.
Yep.
And since then, you know, we got a lot of feedback on there. We seem to get some good feedback. Hey, we like the idea of guests. So we have been putting out the word to try to get somebody who's anti-gun to come on the show and provide to us the anti-gun debate and try to change our minds. How's that going? You're kind of spearheading that.
Yeah. In the wake of the Umpqua College shooting up in Oregon, of course, the anti-gun blather started again. So Bill and I decided that we would do another in-studio guest. and debate somebody who fancies themselves to be an anti-gunner. So the invitation went out on my personal page, which has about 2,700 friends, Facebook friends. It went out on my Facebook public figure page, which has somewhere over 10,000 people following it. The invitation went out on your personal page, and then Vern Van Winkle, the owner of the station, put it on Local Pahrump, which is KPVM's Facebook page. So it's had quite a bit of exposure. And the net result, by the way, they were encouraged to either contact me via Facebook or contact us at daveandbillshow@gmail.com. And after, whatever it is, 10 days of pounding that, we've had exactly 0 response.
Big fat goose egg. I wonder why.
Right. Look, behind a computer doing this, their balls can be as big as they want, right? They're well suited, the anti-gun slogans are well suited for sound bites to impact idiots. But to have a real-time, freewheeling debate, they know they're going to get slammed, and they don't want to be publicly slammed. They're just cowards.
I have an idea. How about we invite that University of Texas at Austin professor who has come out and he says, you know what, starting next September,
right,
CCW holders that are taking class can bring their guns into class on college campuses in Texas. Therefore, I'm resigning, right?
Okay.
A whole lot of political grandstanding. This guy comes out, he gets some national media, national attention. He'd already accepted a fellowship in Australia.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of political grandstanding. But maybe we should invite him to come on the show.
Yeah. Certainly, probably as a tenured professor, he certainly has the time and the money to come on out to Vegas and drive into Pahrump.
Yeah.
I'll go to the airport and pick him up.
Pick him up, absolutely.
Now, his argument, let's talk about it. Now, first of all, it's important to understand he's a shyster because, like you point out, he said he was leaving because of Texas's new law, which was, what do we call that? A lie.
Yeah, absolutely.
He had already agreed to this other professorial position in Australia.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was lying about who the motives for his leaving. Now, but that's what anti-gunners do. They lie.
Sure.
So
far. There might be a truthful one out there. We'll find out.
I'm 56. I haven't found one yet. On this topic, they lie on this topic. I don't want to say that they're a liar.
Yeah, I want to broad stroke brush that, but yeah.
Now, here was the guy's argument. The Texas legislature passed a law, and the governor signed it into effect, saying that starting in, I think it's Jan 1, 2016, students at universities and colleges in Texas will be able to wear their concealed firearms into a classroom. Now, the way the law stands now, they've been able to walk about on campus, but they could never go into a classroom.
Yeah, the only restriction is walking through the threshold of the classroom door.
Correct. Well, that goes away on Jan 1. Now, the professor in his story was that it made it more likely that students were going to shoot at him. Now, I have a couple of observations here. First of all, what are you doing that anyone would want to shoot at you? That's number one. Okay. Other than my time in uniform, I don't believe anyone's wanted to shoot at me. At least they haven't acted on the desire. So as a college professor teaching college classes, but more importantly and more seriously, imagine somebody who's prepared to commit murder. And the law was still like it was before, that they can't enter the classroom.
The professor's in the classroom and I want to murder that guy, but I can't do that.
I'm prepared to commit murder, but I'm not prepared to cross the threshold.
It's not that murder isn't illegal already. It's I don't want to cross the threshold and commit murder.
Yeah.
So absolutely stupid. By the way, you talk about people shooting. I'm wearing this shirt. Some of you might be able to see.
I asked you about that.
Yeah,
now this is what, Arabic?
It is.
Okay.
And a lot of people.
You're a Muslim.
Yeah, people ask me about that. This shirt, actually, because of my past profession, my professional past was able to cross with that of the Jordanian National Anti-Terror Squad. Where we're doing some training and such as that. I don't really, it's not important. But they gave this to me as a gift, which a lot of people here, Jordanian Anti-Terror Squad, aren't they Muslim too? Aren't they also terrorists? The answer is no. You're believing the boogeyman story that the government's giving to you. So no, good guys, and they gave me this shirt, so I wear it on occasion.
Yeah. You know, my definition of terrorism since 9/11, who cares how the media and the government use it? But when I look at how the media and government use it, what it means to me every time I see the word terrorism, somebody who does not accept U.S. dominance in their own country, they don't accept the U.S. being the king of their country, and they're fighting back against that. Terrorist!
Yeah, you know, I've actually, we're getting off on a whole new topic here, but it's good. I've actually talked to a couple people that are close to me, even family members. And, you know, we start talking about this whole Islamophobia thing. And I'll say, you know, I've always wondered, let's put ourselves in this position. We're here in the U.S., but, you know, maybe we're not the world power anymore, which we're really not. China has the world's economy. They're number one now. They have been for the last couple of years. And, you know, we start to wane a little bit more, but we're holding up a little bit. Other countries are coming up. And maybe you get somebody like China or even Russia at this point that decide something's not going right in America, we're going to invade them and come in. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are going to start dying. There's going to be a whole bunch of collateral damage, a lot of casualties, collateral casualties. They're going to be changing up our way of government, telling us the way we need to do things, and then telling us, hey, it's okay to come out and do what you want to do as long as it's within this thing that we're setting up. Would you tolerate that? Well, no.
No.
They'd be terrorists. They'd be invading and occupying, invading terrorist force. How do you think the people in Iraq and Afghanistan, and a few years ago in Libya, and now some of the people in Syria, how do you think they feel about us?
Yeah, that's the part that astounds me, that so many Americans cannot put themselves in somebody else's shoes. You know, researchers say that civilian deaths that were attributed directly or indirectly to the U.S. invasion of Iraq is 1.2 million. Civilians, 1.2 million, okay? To a country who never did anything in the United States, ever.
No.
And so you can imagine if you're an Iraqi, and because we hear stories about, of course, you know, the Holocaust survivors and how they lost, you know, like the little daughter survived who's like now in her 90s, you know, and her whole family was wiped out. And we empathize, right? Oh, the evil Nazis. But you now take somebody in Iraq, and people think that, I think Americans think that people in other countries are dumb. And they're not. In many cases, they're more well-educated than a lot of Americans. They're not dumb. And they know what's going on. Oftentimes, because their press is not manipulated by the U.S. government as is ours, they actually know more factual news than Americans do. And so they know they didn't do anything to the United States. And then you've got a guy who lost his six-year-old sister, who lost his mom, who lost his aunt, because the United States invaded them when they had done nothing to the United States. And then the United States sets up a puppet government that the United States keeps in power by funding and by its military might, which backs up the pathetic Iraqi military. Okay? They might be able to beat the Iraqi military and overthrow the puppet government, but they're never going to beat the backup, which is the U.S. Special Forces and Air Force, which is still stationed there. Okay? So they have this, so then they resort to whatever means is left available to them. Suicide bombing, roadside bombs, IEDs, whatever is left to them, because they cannot fight conventionally, they'll get slaughtered by America in their own country. And then when they fight back, the U.S. government and the U.S. media calls them terrorists. I call them the George Washingtons of their country.
Yeah, they're the patriots of their country.
They are.
And you have Obama saying, they just want jobs.
What?
One of the most...
Did he say that?
Oh, yeah, he said that months ago. He said the way to defeat ISIS and all of these people that are being attracted to come in there is give them jobs. Give them jobs.
They have jobs. Blowing up America.
Yeah.
Blowing up invaders.
Yeah, the thing is they're trying to kick the invading people out. And I got to say, the individuals who are in the military, the grunts, if you will, doing the work, most of them don't even know any better.
True.
They're joining up because they have either a sense of duty. It's a little more.
No,
a little sense of duty to come in there, or you know, it's not always selfless. They want to go into
sense of perceived duty.
Yes. Okay. Or you know, hey, it's the college fund going on, the GI Bill. There's some other things, or job training where I can go into career field, maybe do IT or whatever it is,
or
medical
perhaps they
or whatever.
suffer from a deficiency of morals that they can't understand. Don't go to other people's countries who haven't done anything to you and kill them.
Right. So the individual people who join up, it's all volunteer military. It has been for, you know, certainly 2 or 3 times of re-upping your enlistment. I don't really hold it against them because they're doing the evil work of the evil bastards that are telling them to do the evil work, not knowing. They're snowed. But it's the people in government that are snowing them. That's who I really have the problem with. Get the hell out of the region of the world that we're in that hates us so much, because we have helped to create that hate. And let's try to repair it
Not just
without
helped it,
guns.
we're pretty much the cause.
Yeah, and we've got a number of people that are running for president on either side of the aisle here that are saying, you know, we need to get tougher and have more military in there. You know, that's caused this problem.
Yeah, I did a piece that appears on DaveChampionsLiberty.com on the blog page where I talked about Americans don't understand what's going on with Islam. And I talked about this history from World War I forward, where we have kicked our clumsy feet around and hurt and damaged them repeatedly, and then we're upset that they don't like us.
Imagine.
Yeah.
All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week.
Take care.